Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. FPL Vincenzo here as we head into FPL Game Week 23. And I think for many of us, this is a game week where we're unlikely to try and make transfers. I think Game Week 24 is quite powerful. I think there's quite a lot of opportunity in Game Week 24 to take advantage of fixture swings, to jumble a few things around. And I think there's actually a moment in Game Week 24 to sort of plan a strategy for the next block of games. I'll talk about that probably in the pod next week. So this week, with no real transfers to make, what topic should I talk about? And something I've been trialing a little bit lately is how I pick my defenders, because I felt like for a lot of the season I've got it wrong. And I think there are different methods on how to pick defenders. Some might just set and forget the same 3 or 4 every week, and that's fair enough. But because of the introduction of DEFCON in particular, I think now there's other ways to pick defenders. It's not quite as simple as who's got the most attacking returns, who do you think is most likely to keep a clean sheet. I think there's a lot more to it to that. So let's get into it and we'll have a look at sort of what I'm thinking. So on the screen right now is a couple of game weeks I've had this year where I've clearly got my defenders wrong. I benched Alderate quite early on in the season. He got a 17-pointer. And then I played Malik Thiaw, I think, about 6 weeks in a row for not a lot. And then he scored 2 goals in the same game and I benched that. So 33 points on the bench in 2 game weeks just from them two. So I'm clearly benching the wrong guys quite often. And I made a plan really after we got the AFCON transfers to kind of reset my defence because I felt like I was heading down the wrong path. I got Tarkowski back at that point, which I think has been quite successful. And I've tried to go for an approach of 5 DEFCON guys. So I've avoided, I think, some headaches. I haven't owned Nico O'Reilly. I could see the appeal with the Man City fixtures, the fact he was playing a lot of games and he had attacking returns, or the thought that he was getting forward quite a lot. I haven't owned Munoz. I haven't owned Lewis Hall lately. Defenders like this. So they're the types of defenders we've naturally have picked in FPL. Fullbacks with some attacking threat, the likes of Kirkes, Anthony Robinson, these guys last year. Frimpong would have probably been on radar this year. But I haven't been picking those. I've settled now on, say, 5 centre-backs who all are showing decent capabilities of DEFCON. And how do I pick them each week? So I've listed on the screen at the moment some of the methods we could use to pick them. The first is obviously who's got the best fixture. But I do think this year fixtures are less impactful, less meaningful than they've been in the past. Anyone that's owned Liverpool defenders lately would know they've not kept clean sheets against the likes of Burnley, the likes of Wolves, etc. So those fixtures we traditionally think are good fixtures, I'm not sure they are now. And I think I've spoken on pods before around, I think a lot more Premier League football matches are like 50-50 in probability now than they've ever been in the past. I do think there's a lesser gap, mainly because of the tactics used, mainly because of the capabilities of the inferior teams. A lot of teams play sort of back threes and get 5 into their back line, and that's hard to breach if you've got the wrong creative players. And obviously there's fixture overloads as well for certain teams in Europe and things. So I do think there's many reasons now why clearly there are favourites in game of football, and Liverpool against Wolves, Liverpool are favourites. But you might put that now, Liverpool are maybe 60% likely to win that game, and Wolves rather than maybe 70-80% we would have seen a couple of years ago. Even as recently as last year, I think a good team playing a Southampton or an Ipswich would have been sort of 70-80%, where now we're down to like 60% versus a Wolves or versus a Burnley or something. So something to be said for that we obviously should still use fixture tickers and should still value fixtures as part of our decision making. But for me, it's moved down the food chain in terms of how much we should value that. Second way to pick a defender is on clean sheet probability. Obviously, there's bookmaker odds and stuff we can use for that. And we trust their analysis of where the most likely clean sheets are. We know Arsenal are near the top of that every week, but it can be quite close for a lot of these middling teams. Because I've got 5 DEFCON defenders, I look at the 5 defenders DEFCON over a recent block of 6 games or even over the whole season and think, right, these guys are getting DEFCON the most often right now. the reason I have these 5 defenders is for the 4-point floor every week. And I've kind of set myself a target really from 3 defenders to aim for 16 points. So if the 3 of them that I pick all get DEFCON, that'll obviously be 12. Can one of them get something a bit more, whether it's an attacking return or a clean sheet? That's kind of what I'm hoping for my back 3. So if I'm looking for that 4-point floor, then who's most likely to get DEFCON? And I think there's 2 methods on how to do that. One, the player you own, their propensity for DEFCON. We know Senesi gets it every week. Tarkovsky's pretty good for getting it every week. And Nathan Collins at the moment doing very well for it. So there's that. Or do you look at the opponent? And there are obviously certain opponents and the way they play that bring a higher probability of DEFCON for any defender playing against them. Is that team quite direct in terms of playing long ball from sort of a centre-back into a target striker? I tried that last week with Alderete. He was playing against Crystal Palace. And I think the feeling was Crystal Palace gave a lot of DEFCONs to opposing centre-backs because obviously they play quite long and direct into Mateta. Mateta obviously competes for those long balls. Chances then for opposing defenders to defend against Mateta, maybe clear the ball, maybe make some blocks, maybe intercept those long balls and things like that. And you get higher DEFCONs from those sorts of things. You've still got the 5th, obviously, approach is you look at the attacking capabilities of the player you have, and that could still be a reason to pick someone. I don't. Well, even at centre-back, you could still look at, for example, this week, Alderete is playing West Ham. And you think West Ham, I think there's a reputation. I haven't looked at the data closely enough, but there's a reputation that West Ham aren't very good at defending set pieces, aren't very good aerially. Therefore, could Alderete sort of score in this sort of fixture? Clearly on the screen right now, earlier in the season, he's had a big return, including a goal. And I remember a game, I think it was a midweek game against Liverpool, where I think he maybe had 2 or 3 shots on target in that game because he was getting a lot of sort of set piece opportunities in that fixture. So even though it's centre backs or even moderately attacking fullbacks, there might still be opportunities and circumstances where they stand out as good picks. So I think for me, they're the 5 methods on how to pick defenders. And it's just a case of then organising them. So if I look at my last 4 weeks, so game week 19, 20, 21, 22, on my screen is how I picked them. So we go back to game week 19 and I played a back 4 and I picked the 4 that, according to bookmaker odds, had the highest clean sheet probabilities. Hincapié played Aston Villa and he had a 45% clean sheet probability, only got 2 points. Ollie Watkins scored a 95th minute consolation in that game for a 4-1. I played Van Dijk against Leeds. He got 6 points, 36% probability of a clean sheet. Lacroix, I played against Fulham, 2 points, 33%. And Tarkovsky got 9 points with a 27%. I benched Joachim Andersen against Palace. He was only 24% that week. I played a back 4. Didn't end up too bad. Anderson did outscore both Hincapié and Lacroix. So moderately successful picking on clean sheet probability in that 1 week sample, but not the most premium outcome. Then in game week 20, I moved on to who was most likely to get DEFCON. And I looked at my 5 defenders. I made 2 transfers at this point. I moved Hincapié and Van Dijk out. And I bought in Gabriel and Alderete. So this is my current back 5. Gabriel, Alderete, Anderson, Tarkovsky, Lacroix. And I looked at who do I most expect to get 4 points here. Tottenham weren't particularly good going forward at that point. So I picked Alderete in that game, even though it was away. I thought an away game probably is a higher chance of DEFCON. You expect to do more defending in an away game. There's a chance here Alderete could get a haul because Tottenham not attacking very well under Thomas Frank, struggling to score goals. And it's an away game where he can get DEFCON. He got 1 point. Gabriel got 9 against Bournemouth, fine. I benched Joachim Andersen at home to Liverpool. He got 2 points. Played Tarkovsky at home to Brentford for 4. And then Lacroix got 8 away to Newcastle. And I played him for the same reasons I played Alderete. That I felt like there was a chance there of extra DEFCON in an away game. And I didn't expect Palace to get battered. I thought they might lose 1 or 2-0. But if Lacroix gets DEFCON, that'll be 4 points. I'd be happy with that. So that didn't really work because Alderete got 1. But Lacroix got 8. And I picked them both under the same circumstances. So it's awkward there. Into the next week, so game week 21, I had 4 defenders playing at home. And Alderete was away to Brentford. I picked the 4 home guys, and this didn't work out too bad. Lacroix got 8 against Villa. Tarkowski got 4 against Wolves. Anderson got 2 against Chelsea. Gabriel got 6 against Liverpool. Alderete only got 1 away to Brentford. So maybe a method in that. His clean sheet probability was above Joachim Andersen going into the game by 1%, but he got 1 point less. He got booked. And then last week in game week 22, I decided to look more at the opponent and try to pick DEFCON based on this. So I'll say Alderete was playing at home to Crystal Palace. I thought this was a really good fixture for DEFCON. Palace, again, not scoring loads of goals. 34% clean sheet probability. Only got 1 point again. So 3 game weeks in a row now, Alderete has actually only scored 1 point. Something to bear in mind with him. So I picked him as a DEFCON guy for 3 weeks in a row. He hasn't got it. I think Mukiele has and got an assist in this period. So some big variant swings there. But some question marks here. If you're picking a Sunderland defender and he's not getting DEFCON, how useful is he? He is obviously cheap. But that didn't work picking him. Interesting last week as well, I did pick James Tarkowski. I know a lot of people benched him. I got 8 points off him in the away game with Villa. His clean sheet probability was the lowest at 18%. But I saw some stats somewhere, I think that was from Tom Hadley, that suggested that Villa are also prominent in terms of giving opponents centre-backs DEFCON. So again, I followed that information through. It was seen that the defender playing against Villa was more likely to get DEFCON than the defender playing against Leeds or playing against Nottingham Forest or against Sunderland. So I went with Tarkowski and he got me 8 points. I got 8 points from Gabriel, but I'd say I won off Alderete. I benched Anderson and Lacroix. So some things to think about moving forward here. I don't think any of these methods are clear-cut. But I'm trying now to juggle all of this together to sort of impact future decisions. So I look at this week, game week 23. So we've got Gabriel at home to Man United, Tarkowski at home to Leeds, Lacroix at home to Chelsea, Anderson at home to Brighton, and Alderete away to West Ham. If I had a decent bench boost, I could in theory play all 5 of these because all 5 of these fixtures look reasonable. In terms of clean sheets, it's saying I should play Gabriel, Tarkowski and Alderete, 37, 32 and 28 respectively. Anderson at 25, Lacroix at 19. If I look at DEFCON across the last 6 weeks, Tarkowski comes out on top. He's got DEFCON in all of them. Lacroix has got DEFCON 4 times in 6, Anderson 3 times in 6, Alderete only 2 times in 6, and Gabriel 1 time in 6. So if I'm using a DEFCON model, I should play Tarkowski, Lacroix and Anderson. And if I look at the opponents, sort of giving up DEFCON, again, Tarkowski looks good here against Leeds. Apparently there's an 87% chance looking at Tom Hadley's data here. 68 for Joachim Andersen, 56 for Lacroix, Alderete at 48, Gabriel at 48. So in the 3 metrics I'm looking at here, Tarkowski, Lacroix, Anderson win on 2 of them. Gabriel's got the highest clean sheet probability and obviously the goal threat that comes with him, and Alderete on 1. I'm never benching Gabriel, let's be realistic. So he's playing. Tarkowski looks logical to play, ticking all of the 3 boxes. But who do I play from the other 3? Lacroix's DEFCON is more likely than Joachim Andersen's, according to the last 6 weeks of data. Anderson's got better DEFCON playing against Brighton, supposedly. Alderete's got the highest probability of a clean sheet. So, and clean sheet points are the bread and butter for defenders, aren't they? They're the obviously 4 points for that. You don't get 4 points for DEFCON. So then I start looking at other considerations here for the third defender. That we'll start with Lacroix playing Chelsea. Chelsea played Brentford in Liam Rosenior's first game. Brentford centre-backs didn't get DEFCON, despite being quite good for it lately, Nathan Collins in particular. Chelsea are playing in a way, I think, where they don't play particularly direct. They try and pass through the phases from defence through midfield into number 10. And then the number 10 tries to slide the ball forward to the number 9 or play wide and crosses come into the box. I'm undecided right now which is the best model in terms of a defender getting DEFCON. Is it against a team that attacks with long ball? Or is it against a team that gets the ball wide and put crosses in? If teams put crosses in, obviously there's more chances for clearances, more chances for blocks, maybe even more likely possibilities for tackles. But if a team's playing long ball, I guess a defender's just generally more busy in a game. A centre-back is competing with the centre-forward more often in a game to do defensive things. So A bit worrying, though, I think that Brentford centre-backs didn't get DEFCON against Chelsea. What does that mean for Lacroix? Chelsea also, I think, are not particularly strong physically. I don't think they have many sort of aerially dominant players. I think you can outmuscle them. I think you can be physical against them and win that battle. So Lacroix obviously is one of the main target men in the box. If Palace can get some set pieces, can he win an aerial battle versus a tossing or someone like that? I think he probably could. So I think his goal threat is arguably a bit higher playing at Chelsea than what it would be against other teams. I've owned him for every game week since game week 1. Haven't got a goal off him yet. I'd be absolutely livid, I think, if I benched him the week he scored. So I'm tempted to play him for that reason. Not a good reason to pick someone in fantasy games, but it is something that impacts our thoughts. So I feel like his goal threat is reasonable. Let's move on to Joachim Andersen. I say no DEFCON, I don't think, in the last 3 games, which is a concern for him as well. But Brighton apparently give it up quite often. 25% clean sheet probability. Is there enough here? His goal threat, I think, is lower than Lacroix and Alderate. So he's bottom of that particular table for me in terms of the opponent he's against and in terms of him as a player. But he is at home. Brighton aren't always the most reliable team. They tend to hit and miss a little bit. They're the team you could keep a clean sheet against. So there is a temptation to play him. And I say Alderate, I say there's been games this year where he's posed really significant goal threat. He's already had a 17-pointer, did well against Liverpool. West Ham, based on my sort of loose knowledge, are arguably the worst set-piece defending team in the league. If that's true, then obviously his goal threat is at its most superior here. And you have to think he's got some chance of a clean sheet and some chance of a DEFCON, even though he hasn't been reliable lately. So a headache, because at the moment, I don't trust Palace, Fulham or Sunderland defensively. Palace obviously in a bit of turmoil with Gahey leaving, Glasner falling out with the club, all this sort of stuff. Mateta wants to leave. You don't quite know what the dressing room's like there. Are the players going to down tools? Are the players going to play to their full potential? Are certain players going to not do their jobs properly? Will Palace go on a run now of struggling to do the stuff that they've done so well for most of the year? So there is something in that with Lacroix. Do I trust Palace enough? Fulham, I never trust defensively. I don't really think they're a particularly strong clean sheet team. They do have some AFCON players back, which should make them stronger. Will it make them change system? Get an Iwobi back, something like that. I just don't trust them in any game to keep a clean sheet. They're just one of those teams I struggle to do that with. So with his minimal goal threat and sort of inaccurate DEFCON lately, do I want to play him? Not sure I do. And then Alderate, I say 3 1-pointers in a row. But he does have probably the biggest goal threat of my 3 defenders. And he's probably playing against the worst attack of my 3 defenders. I think West Ham's attack's worse than Brighton's and Chelsea's. So, and the clean sheet odds suggest he's the highest. So, yeah, big decisions for me before the deadline here. Which one of these 3 I play? And there's a good chance I'll get it wrong, and one of the 2 I bench probably ends up with a double-figure return there. But be good to hear in the comments, really, how you pick your defenders, because I say at the moment I'm not getting it right. And there are quite a lot of methods here on how to do it. I haven't settled on the right one yet, but I feel like this is something I want to get right sort of fairly soon, have my method clear. So we've still got, whatever it is, 15, 16 game weeks to go. It'd be nice to pick defenders using the right method. But it's been tricky at the moment. I'll just move on quickly to Gameweek23. Not loads of decisions, I don't think, this week. I do have 2 free transfers. I've got 7 million in the bank. At the moment, I've put my team up with Anderson in the back 3, Lacroix, Alderate on the bench. Gui's the other one, so don't need to talk about him. What do I do? So I'm playing Elliot Anderson here. I've benched him quite a lot lately. Keeps getting 4 points every week, 5 points every week. I've just got a bit fed up of seeing his 4 or 5 points on the week on my bench when I keep playing 1 and 2 point defenders. I've got way more trust that he's getting 4 points right now than one of my defenders. So I'm inclined to want to play someone like a him or a Garner or someone like that ahead of the 4th defender. So again, trying to learn some lessons. I've benched quite a lot of Anderson 4-pointers lately. So at the moment he's playing, but he obviously could be sold. My planned move is to do him to Bruno Fernandes next week. So I could bring that forward, but what's the point? lots of content creators and myself included think, why would you bring Bruno in against Arsenal? But we probably would have said, why bring Bruno in against Man City last week? And he did well. Arsenal's defence is a bit more resilient and a bit more trustworthy than City's, though. But there's still probably a higher ceiling there for Bruno Fernandes and Elliot Anderson. So I could just do that now. Maybe the floor's a bit lower, but the ceiling's higher. Just do that now. Get Bruno in a week early. I haven't got to worry about dealing with these price rises next week because you know he's going to be the most popular transfer in. In terms of more of a, I won't call it a 1 week punt, but I've also got the option of Semenyo here. There's been various rumours and speculation about what sort of team Man City might put out against Wolves this week. Even talk of Haaland potentially being benched. I'm not sure I buy it. But I think we're pretty clear Semenyo's playing. Didn't play in the Champions League midweek, won't play in the Champions League next week either. So his league minutes for now seem quite secure. In terms of fixtures, you'd be hard pressed to say that Man City at home to Wolves isn't the strongest fixture this week, despite the fact Wolves are improving and Man City have not been great. I think it's still nice to have a piece of that Man City attack. People have the likes of Foden and Cherky, and who knows about their minutes. Semenyo is pretty nailed here. And he's probably a decent hold for a while if you wanted to get him in. Obviously, potentially, you might need to get him gone before game week 31 if City end up blanking because of the cup final. But in terms of someone to own for the next block of games, I think Semenyo is more than valid. And then next week, I'll find a different way to get Bruno in. Maybe I'll sell Harry Wilson for a block or something, and I'll have Semenyo, Rodgers, Enzo, Saka, Bruno for a bit. So that's an option, to do Anderson to Semenyo now, chase the big ceiling with him, and then do Wilson to Bruno next week. Or do I just have the free transfers next week and then make big decisions? Some of the big decisions I'm looking at making. Do I want double Man United attack? Obviously, if Mbeumo played as a number 9 last week, I expect him probably to play as a number 9 this week as well. Not sure if he plays as a number 9 permanently moving forward because, let's be realistic, I don't think Man United will play Dorgu left wing every week. I think he's there now as almost a second left back to protect Luke Shaw. He's almost there now as a quicker, more athletic transition counter-attack threat. Him and Ahmad out wide offer more of that than Acuna, Mbeumo or a Mount would. So I think horses for courses here. These fixtures that Man United have had in the first 2 games under Carrick have been games where you'd expect Man United to have 30-40% possession, and they've picked a team to play on transition, to play on counter-attack, who work hard out wide. The next block of games, it might be a different skill set of player United need, and we might see Cunha or Mount on the wing or something. So I do think Mbeumo is probably more likely in the next block to play more minutes wide than through the middle. But if United are attacking with good intent and doing well, then there's a possibility I'll want Mbeumo and Bruno, and Mbeumo could be a bit of a differential here. Obviously, Saka's been frustrating for a lot of managers lately. Clearly not worth the money. I could be convinced to go to triple Arsenal defence. I say I've got concerns around Alderate. I still think he's fine as a budget option, but I'm not convinced massively by the upcoming fixtures for Alderate. It doesn't really serve me any purpose in game week 29 and 31, which are important for me in particular at the moment. So Saka could be used as a make weight to get a Semenyo or to get an Mbeumo. Even next week, let's say I did do Anderson to Semenyo now, I could do Saka to Bruno Fernandes next week and then upgrade Alderate to Timber and have triple Arsenal defence. And that would be all right. If Arsenal did double in game week 26, I wouldn't mind having triple Arsenal defence and no Saka for that. So keeping my options open at the moment if I roll, that if Saka gets injured or he gets reduced minutes again or something like that, then I have to seriously consider selling him and he can go to Bruno and then I upgrade a defender to Timber. And might be quite a nice differential to have triple Arsenal defence here. Senesi is another option. I say he's the one sort of what I would call regular DEFCON guy I don't have. And if I don't want Alderate or I've really seen being concerned by Crystal Palace in their current state of chaos, then I might want to get him in. Ekatike, I think I've been quite lucky not owning. Obviously, that swing from Thiago to Ekatike, for those that did it's been brutal. But his underlying data is still very good. I still think his minutes are very good. There's signs, I think, from Liverpool of improvement. I thought they were quite good against Marseille in the Champions League this week. So it'll be typical for people or other managers to own Ekatike for supposed good fixtures, get nothing from him, and then he goes on a run of points directly after that once people decide to sell him. I'm actually considering buying him at this point, which might seem a bit stupid, but the underlying data is really good, and he could be a bit of a differential for this block. I'm not against spending some of my money moving Gui up to Ekatike here, especially if I sold Saka to facilitate Bruno. Obviously, Saka, Bruno, and Ekatike as a treble would be a lot to afford. There are ways to do it, but I've not always wanted to play 3 up front, but there might be a little opportunity here for Ekatike. And I say waiting again gives me a bit more evidence on what Palace are like. Will they buy anyone? Will they get a new defender? What will the team sort of morale be like in these games? Will they just sort of fall off a cliff effectively? So I think rolling is probably the most sensible. But I've done pods before about being proactive rather than passive. And I feel like being proactive this week there could be some benefits to it. I'm really tempted by Semenyo this week against Wolves. I think there's a double figure return in there for him. And if I'm prepared to do that, and then next week use Saka to get to Bruno, and then upgrade Alderate to Timber, that would be obviously my free transfers used next week. But that I wouldn't mind that going forward. Raya, Gabriel, Timber, Anderson, Tarkowski, Lacroix, and then Bruno goes into midfield with Semenyo, Rodgers, Enzo, Wilson, and then have Thiago and Haaland. I don't know. There's loads of ways to go from here, and I think next week, so I'll talk about it in more detail next week, is do I want to get this bench boost gone in game week 29 or 30? If I do, then I have to be a bit more considered around who I keep and who I sell and who I bring in. If I'm prepared to put my eggs in the basket of game week 33 being the best bench boost because it's the biggest projected double, and I can wildcard directly into it, then if I don't have to worry about my bench boost soon, I can still have a bit of a weaker bench moving forward and be a bit more aggressive with my transfers in the next block. Because say I'll be wildcarding 32 and I'll wildcard into that bench boost. Now I need to keep a stronger squad, so I'll have to be a bit more careful who I keep. So hopefully we'll get a bit more information next week that can start helping form that plan. But yeah, other than that, I think that's it for this episode. So yeah, keen to hear how you pick your defenders. I'm struggling with it at the moment. I seem to get it wrong most weeks. And it was easier in the old days, shall we say, to just pick a Trent, a Cancelo, and I don't know, an Arsenal defender or something, play them every week and have 2-4 million guys on the bench for emergencies. But the game's moved on since then. And adapting to this combination of clean sheets, DEFCON, attacking returns, how important the fixtures are, etc., is proving a slow adaptation for me. So I'm struggling. But yeah, that's it. I'll stop waffling now and I'll end it. So good luck in game week 23, everyone, and speak to you all soon. Cheers.